The first question will go to Jen Wallace, and then we'll alternate taking being the first person to respond to the questions. There's been a lot of talk about development and parking at the tables. It seems that a related issue is traffic volume. I'd like to get your views on transportation citywide and how conditions can be improved. That was the end of that one. So improving the traffic volume conditions and the related issues of volume. Thank you.
Well, one of my wishes would be to convince the University of Delaware to not allow underclassmen to bring cars again, but I don't know that we're going to put that genie back in the bottle. You know, Newark has it's honestly it's a challenge. We're a crossroads. We started out as a crossroads, and a lot of the traffic that comes through Newark is not of our own making. It is traffic that's on its way to somewhere else. People are going to Hocassin, Pike Creek, Maryland, PA, and many of our roads. Is my time over? No, not yet. Okay. And many of our roads are state roads, those main thoroughfares, so we don't have a lot of control. But you know, one of the main areas we do have control over is the amount of growth in the city, and more growth brings more traffic, and that is something where council needs to be critical.
If you want the same question, you get the same question. You want me to read it over again? I'm sorry. Okay.
Sure. As pointed out, yes, Newark has a lot of pass-through traffic, whether that's tractor trailers going down Main Street or Delaware Avenue on their way to Maryland or wherever, or folks bypassing the toll on 95. Just to save a couple of bucks every day. There's some things that we can do in working with DelDOT, whether it's traffic calming measures to make sure that traffic is deterred where possible, or diverted towards more palatable alternate routes. And then there's some other things, like I'm very excited to hear about the DelDOT making some modifications to the traffic lights downtown, because just simple things in terms of light timing and sensors and the like can help traffic flow a lot better once it gets into town. So I think it's mostly a matter of just making sure we work with our partners and use our infrastructure as best we can.
Thank you. This question then will go to Ricky first and then to Jen. It has to do with alternatives to vehicles. Public transit, bicycle alternatives, are there any other alternatives, and especially those suggestions for seniors and elderly residents?
Sure. Yeah, that's something that is very important as we develop more densely downtown. Every trip that we can divert to a bicycle or walking or on a bus is another car that's not taking up space on the road, and it's another car that we don't have to find parking for. So as we've developed in a mixed-use, compact manner, I think that's been very conducive. I mean, I was a full-time bicycle commuter for the time that I worked at the city. And so it's a viable transportation alternative in Newark, and I think our development patterns, we keep them in the direction that they're going, are going to be conducive to that.
Jen, comments on public transportation?
Sure. So I've been a proponent for bicycle traffic. Everyone we can convince to use a bicycle is another car that we can keep off the road. However, that's not for everyone. And the city has been making efforts to work with our partners to try to improve public transportation. There is a lot of room for improvement in our public transportation here. And not just in the city, but from the city to out surrounding areas as well. We are going to be seeing improvements at the train station, which I think is also going to be a real boon for the city. One of those improvements is bringing the MARC commuter train to Newark, which I think is going to be a huge value. So we can, rather, for those of us who like to go down south to Baltimore or Washington, we can use the MARC train rather than having to drive to Perryville and get that from Newark.
Thank you. You will get this one first, Tim. Your perspective on using public money to subsidize private businesses located only on Main Street. So downtown.
Yeah. So I am not in favor of one of my big guiding principles is equitability, and I don't think that we should be using funds public funds that are paid for by taxpayers to help special interests. We need to be equitable and fair, and if we're going to be helping Newark businesses, we need to be helping all Newark businesses. And that is something that has come up recently with the Downtown Newark Partnership, and they are actually undergoing a reorganization process, and one of the things that I've heard from their committee that is looking at that reorganization is that they do plan to open up their group to wider Newark businesses and not just focus on Main Street.
Do I need to repeat the question?
So I think the downtown, our downtown is a treasure. It's a regional destination, and it got to be that way in no small part thanks to the efforts of the Downtown Newark Partnership, winning a Great American Main Street Award in 2011. As organizations do need to change over time, the Downtown Newark Partnership is at a state that it's evolving. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that the needs now are not the same as when the Downtown Newark Partnership was created in 1998. I'm extremely concerned at the length of time it's taken to get to where we are. The reorganization process has been going on for, I guess, close to 2 years now. I'm also concerned that it was a representative of the University of Delaware updating council as to the reorganization of the DNP. If the city shouldn't be driving the bus, the university shouldn't be driving the bus either. It should be something that the downtown business community takes ownership of and makes sense.
We address this issue, and these are two separate questions, so Ricky's first.
In terms of state budgetary issues, I think it's important that we work with our legislators to make sure that our voice is heard. We pay a large amount of money to a lobbyist to essentially just report back what's going on in Dover, which is a service that we might be able to make better use of Newark taxpayer dollars and use the services of the Delaware legal local governments to be that connection. In terms of the specifics of the state budget, I would defer to our state legislators for that point.
Yeah.
So this year is my understanding that the state is expected to have a surplus, and in fact at the last city council meeting that came up, our lobbyist was talking about the recent budget meetings that have been going on in Dover, and that surplus came up. So one of the points that I brought up is that I think it's time again for the city of Newark to do a pilot payment in lieu of taxes push. And what that means is, because we have over 40% of our property here that's not taxable, property taxable, 37% of that is University of Delaware. the state gives other municipalities payment in lieu of taxes for those non-taxable properties. But the city of Newark does not have that. And I know both of our Newark state representatives have been supportive of this, and I know Representative Bombach has, and Representative Kowalko. So, you know, we already have their support, but where a lobbyist comes into play is that we need to reach out to other legislators, because we can't get something like that passed in the legislature with only Newark representation.
Thank you. You get the first, answer this one first too. The Clean Water Act was designed to limit industrial pollution and to protect woods and forests. How do you reconcile this with the building of the village of Chestnut Hill, which will require deforestation of 9 acres at Independence Way?
So currently, for those who aren't aware, there is a property that is not in the city of Newark currently. It would be the developer proposing an annexation and a development of 44 townhomes on a piece of land that is currently forested, old growth forest. And there are already stormwater challenges in that area. So that project was brought forward to the city, and the city had a lot of problems with it. So it's been returned back to the developer. The developer has expressed interest in bringing it back with changes. And I've been working with the developer and their representatives, asking them to hold a community meeting, because I know there are a lot of residents in the area who have concerns, as should we all, particularly when it comes to clean water. And that at this point I have a meeting scheduled with the developer's representatives to plan a community meeting mid-April after the election. So residents should be hearing more about that.
Ricky?
As with any development, it's important that all applicable laws and codes from Newark's all the way up to federal laws are followed. I think that in the case of this development, as I've said before, I'm happy to see that developers want to annex in to the city. It means that they value our services, and it means that we get to make those land use decisions here locally, as opposed to making those decisions by the county in Newcastle. And the key is working with the developers and engaging the community to make sure that whatever development is ultimately done makes sense for the community. And if that means that a solution can't be reached with this developer, or whatever the case may be, as we work through that process, we'll see what the case is.
Thank you. You'll get the answer first time here. Over the past few years, it seems that nonviolent crime has increased. Thefts, burglaries, car break-ins, etc. Do you see this as an issue in Newark? Ricky?
I think our police force does a very good job. You know, we do need to do a better job of focusing on a lot of the smaller type crimes that, frankly, other communities don't have the luxury of putting their police efforts into. So, as our police have done a fantastic job tackling, you know, the most serious crime, it would be good to work to address the additional concerns of the residents.
Thank you. Jen?
So I know this is an issue that concerns a lot of residents, and I definitely can understand that. One thing I would like to point out is that crime overall is down in Newark. The police have crime statistics, and we can track those, and we can see that while sometimes it seems like there has been an increase, crime is actually down. Now, what is up there are certain areas where there are reoccurring crimes. You know, we have some shopping centers that seem the same types of crime over and over again. We have some of our motels that have ongoing issues. And the police are addressing those, and they are doing a great job, and in my opinion, they're addressing those with task forces, and you know, really highlighting those areas that need the extra attention. And I think they are doing a good job. You know, it's one of those things that it makes for good headlines. So I think we probably see a lot of those kinds of stories in the Newark Post. But rest assured that the police are doing their best job possible.
Thank you. This is back to the university growth plans. Do you believe that the university's current plans for growth in both student and faculty population pose any special challenges or opportunities?
So, yes. You know, we are a university town, and that does bring a lot of opportunities. That's one of the reasons why, you know, I live here, and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of you folks live here. It's great to live in a university town. University's most recent plans to add almost 7,000 students over the next 10 years, though, is a very big challenge for the city. We're over the tipping point where there are more students in town than there are permanent residents, and that is only going to get worse. So this is the challenge that City Council needs to focus on with the incoming city manager to address, so that we can grow our non-student population with housing. We have a responsibility to do so. It's in our comprehensive plan. It's something that residents of the city have said that we need to do.
The continued growth of the university has been a consistent concern that I've heard from residents, understandably so. You know, the university has every intention of bringing more students to Newark, but no intention necessarily of finding housing for them on campus. So we find them in the community. As we work through that, it's important that we work on our codes to make sure that the development that does happen is inclusive, addressing things like the building of 6 and 8 bedroom apartments is something that we can deal with. And I think that it's time that we take a fresh look at our zoning code and see what might make sense to guide development, so that it houses, you know, it's inclusive now, but so that it also has a long-standing use into the future should the university ever shrink.
Thank you. Newark wants to be a bicycle-friendly town, but there's significant issues about safety for the bicyclists themselves. What can we do to improve the safety of the bicyclists?
As I mentioned, I was a full-time cycle commuter for several years, and I can definitely share the concerns of some of the pinch points that are less than ideal for cyclists. I think that one thing that Newark has done very well and needs to continue doing is to make cost-effective improvements as part of existing transportation infrastructure projects, whether it's simply adding a bike lane or slightly reconfiguring an intersection and things like that, as DelDOT, especially since so many of our roads are DelDOT, as they're working through and updating a lot of our infrastructure to make sure that it's inclusive for cyclists, because I think there's a lot of return that can be had for a minimum of investment.
So Newark has pretty great bicycle infrastructure. I work in the city of Wilmington, and I can tell you that the city of Wilmington doesn't necessarily have very good bicycle infrastructure. So, but there's definitely room for improvement, and there are projects in the way. There's Delaware Avenue two-way cycle track, and that's where we need to focus our resources, is on those pinch points where, so we can encourage those of us who may be more reluctant bicycle riders to feel safer and to bicycle. And you know, there are also small things that we can do. I recently helped a resident in District 3 who said that there's one area on her ride where she consistently comes up and there are cars parked in bicycle lane. So, I works budget. Okay, well, how much time do we have? This is a perennial problem, and it's one that we are, we need to work with our incoming city manager to identify how we can better fund the city moving forward. There are a variety of approaches. One of those is to control the growth of the city, and if the city itself isn't growing, then we should maintain the size of our city government and do so in the most efficient way as possible. Another thing that we need to look at is alternative funding sources. In the past, the city's relied on energy, electricity sales to fund the city, and that's not it's not the cash cow it once was. So we need to identify additional sources of revenue, and that could be from the small to the large, but we need to find a sustainable solution moving forward.
I think the first step, as we bring in a new city manager, will be bringing in someone with a fresh set of eyes to take a clean sheet look at our city government as an organization, to see how it can be reconfigured to make sure that it's providing the best possible service at the lowest possible cost. Over the last several years, we've had a lot of reconfigurations of departments, and departments have merged and unmerged. New departments have been created, in some cases to address new needs, like IT. But we need to make sure that our structure, our management structure, and the positions that we have are best suited to addressing the needs of our residents in the most efficient way that's possible. Certainly, continued look at revenue diversification and broadening our tax base is going to be key as well. But we have the most direct control over our expenditures, and I think that that's something that will be very important to look at.
Thank you.